Today we read from Luke chapter 1, verses 5 through 25. In the days of Herod, king of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah of the division of Abijah, and he had a wife of the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. And they were both righteous before God, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of the Lord blameless. But they had no child, because Elizabeth was barren, and both were advanced in years. Now while he was serving as priest before God, when his division was on duty according to the custom of priesthood, it fell to him by lot to enter the temple of the Lord and burn incense. And the whole multitude of people were praying outside at the hour of incense. And there appeared to him an angel of the Lord standing on the right side of the altar of incense. And Zechariah was troubled when he saw him, and fear fell upon him. But the angel said to him, "Do not be afraid, Zechariah, for your prayer is heard, and your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you shall call him his name John. And you shall have joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth, for he will be great before the Lord. He shall drink no wine nor strong drink, and he will be filled with the Holy Spirit even from his mother's womb. And he will turn many of the sons of Israel to the Lord their God. He will go before him in the spirit and power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the disobedient to the wisdom of the just, to make ready for the Lord a people prepared." And Zechariah said to the angel, "How shall I know this? For I am an old man, and my wife is advanced in years." And the angel answered him, "I am Gabriel, who stand in the presence of the God, and I was sent to speak to you and to bring you this good news. And behold, you will be silent and unable to speak until the day that these things come to pass, because you did not believe my words, which will be fulfilled in their time." And the people were waiting for Zechariah, and they wondered at his delay in the temple. And when he came out, he could not speak to them, and they perceived that he had seen a vision in the temple, and he made signs to them and remained dumb. And when his time of service was ended, he went to his home. After these days his wife Elizabeth conceived, and for 5 months she hid herself, saying, "Thus the Lord has done to me in the days when he's looked on me to take away my reproach among men." This is the reading of the word.
Thanks be to God.
Y'all said that one with enthusiasm. I myself have never struggled with infertility. We know, right? True statement, right? You all have heard much of our story, how Chad and I had a miscarriage, and then we've since had 4 wonderful children. So this story of Elizabeth's despair at being barren is not one that I necessarily can put myself into, right? And yet I have several friends who have struggled deeply with this, where you almost feel guilty with your pregnancy announcement because you know that they cannot and have not, and most likely will not. They are in a dark time that you do not share. There are other things, though, in life where it has not been wonderful and great and lovely. I cannot deny that in this last year I have struggled deeply because I have not been able to sing. My voice, while I've been able to somewhat speak, right, is such that some of the chords, my vocal range, things like that have been lost due to my autoimmune disease. And for many of you, you know that music is my number one. Here I go. I would be that crazy lady in the car driving along singing to the tunes. I still do that, right? I mean, maybe. You might see me bebopping along regardless. It's not been easy to see others do things that you yourself, for whatever reason, cannot. We all go through times of darkness in our lives. And it can be doubly difficult when we see somebody else on this beautifully lit path and our own seems like we're on the road through the forest. You know, when Dorothy is going through the woods and you're like, don't go that way. Where do we find joy? Because like I told the kids this morning, joy is not something that you get from the outside. It's not, ooh, I found $5 in my pocket. Y'all, I'm still praying for that one, right? It's not, oh, that lottery ticket that I know I'm going to win. Joy comes from within. And it is sustained by faith. You see, the darkest of times are made more light by that joy because we know that their light is at the end of the tunnel, right? We've heard that one all the time. I don't know how many of you have ever driven 77 on a route in any way, shape, or form through West Virginia. I don't recommend it. Let me just throw that out. But you know, you're going through a tunnel, and it gets to that point of darkness, even with everybody else's lights, and you're like, okay, where's the end? Where's the end? Yet we know it's coming. Elizabeth and Zechariah would have been in a point and in a state within their culture of the time where because Elizabeth could not have children and was barren, they would have not been as elevated as others that did have kids and could propagate the population and carry on the family and do all of those things. Because that was the culture of the time. We don't live in that culture today, thankfully. Although there are still parts of it, I can tell you every single week whenever I go out with all 4 girls, the number one question that we get, when are you going to have a boy? I look at them and I'm like, I've got 4. You all are crazy. I mean, I know I was crazy for 4, but come on. Like, why do I need to add? Or I have several friends who have all boys. They get the exact opposite question. For those of you that have a mixture of children, you are lucky on one level. But then there are those that, like, you know, you have a mix and then they have a third and they're like, well, why? You already had one and the other. I mean, I never understand it. It's as if when we're in the midst of something, we get tunnel vision, don't we? We can't see what's going on with somebody else's life beside us. That can be hard. Particularly when you're going through a rough time yourself. To see that somebody else is also going through a rough time. To have compassion or empathy or even just share in co-misery together. That's hard. It's hard to seek out. Because we don't want to. We feel when we would share our burdens with one another that for some reason that would like amplify them and make them worse. You don't want to hear about somebody else's troubles because then it either diminishes your own and you feel like, oh wait, well maybe mine aren't quite so bad. Ew. I know you've all had those stories where you're talking with a friend and you're going, and they're telling you about what's going on, and you were going to share what was going on in your life, you're like, oh, no, I'm good. Everything's good. But it's not. Sometimes, in order to seek joy, we must share what's dark. In order to find joy, we must acknowledge the darkness. Otherwise, we cannot see the light. That's a contrast, right? We understand contrast. It's one of the very first things that we learn when we are little. There's a reason why all babies' books are weird in bright colors or they're black and white. And that's because all they can discern is the contrast between lightness and darkness. And it is something that intuitively stays with us throughout our lives. And although we do not share our darkness, we only share our joys. I mean, y'all, you can go to any social media thing, or you can be at a party for the holidays with your work, and you know everybody's smiling and laughing on the outside, and yet on the inside we are broken. Zechariah and Elizabeth had lived with this. They were considered old. I don't know what that means. Old enough, obviously, to still have kids, but my assumption is that they had probably reached that midlife point. You know those bonus babies? Some of y'all are sitting in this room. Those like 43, someone's 43, 44, 45-ish, and suddenly they're like having their second round of kids. You know those people. You've heard, some of you might have been them. I don't know. But that's my assumption, just based on kind of the timeline, because you have to consider Mary, we know biblically would have been 14, 15, 16. So her cousin Elizabeth would have had to have been significantly older, at least old enough that her spouse says we're old. Not all y'all own that yet, right? I mean, how many of you who are in your 40s, 50s, and 60s would like to have a new baby? I got 4. You can borrow them. I mean, they're not quite babydom. I mean, they're at least potty trained-ish, so you got that taken care of, right? But they lived in this dark time. And I think, too, that we feel as if the darkness is overwhelming sometimes, but yet there are going to be channels of those dark times that continually align with other parts of our life. You see, we can still have periods of darkness while seeking joy. It's not as if you can have one or the other. It's not an either-or situation. It's a both-and. We understand that, right? That's a concept of literature, English, and life. That it's not always one or the other. Sometimes you can be in a period of grief. You can be in a period of mourning. You can be in a period of uncertainty, of darkness, of depression, anxiety. You can have all sorts of things going on in your life on one level. And then on the other, you have joy. The difficulty found in that is that joy, oftentimes in the darkest of times, has to be sought after. It's not like it just comes at us. We're bombarded by joy, because you don't feel it that well. In fact, you almost dismiss it. We've been there. Where life's just stinking. It's not fun. It's not pretty. You're overwhelmed, overburdened. You have exams coming up in the next week, or you just finished a bunch of them and you're sure you failed. Grades are due. You have a list a mile long of things that have to be accomplished by December 24th, because if they're not, somebody's not getting Christmas. If I could be added to that list, that'd be lovely. I'm just going to throw that out, you know. We can be overwhelmed by all the have to, must do, need to do, feel like it, obligations, all those things. So where's the joy? Where's the joy? I think sometimes it gets buried and we've got to find it. See, Zechariah didn't believe the angel Gabriel. He lived in that state for so long that wouldn't you? I mean, I know some of y'all would go, whoa, 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 wait a minute. I can't have baby. No. We've been down this road. Do not give me this false hope. I kind of feel for him that he's got to be silent. Although I know my sweet spouse is probably going, I'll take that.
Well, I got a question. You be silent or me be silent? I want to know where I'm going on this one.
True. It's a true story there, right? There are a lot of times in life where we have to seek joy. I think Christmas, it's the most evident because there seems to be joy all around us. You walk into the sanctuary and it's filled with all of these reminders of things that are supposed to be joyful, and yet it can still be bittersweet. So where do we seek it? How do we seek it? One is a conscious decision. You have to say, I will find joy in this, in some way, shape, or form. I will find God's joy, because that's the important part of it. Joy is built and sustained by our faith throughout. When you are going through a difficult time, what do you turn to? Turn to God. We were reading that in our Bible study this morning, the very prayer that George, in It's a Wonderful Life, George Bailey, It's a Wonderful Life, are we all caught up? Good? He prays because he's going through this tough time and he's like, Lord, I just don't know. I don't know if you're there. I don't know if this works. He didn't have that inherent confidence that God is present in and throughout life, that we who are people of faith who consistently seek after God will consistently be able to seek after joy. It might not be easy to find. Acknowledge that. Own that. There are going to be times and seasons where seeking joy is not fun, and you have to make yourself do it. The Bible says the more you practice, the better you get at it, right? It's in there somewhere, I promise. I didn't quote it verbatim. The more you do it, the better you get at it. It doesn't dismiss that you've gone through a difficult point, or that you might still be in the midst of one. It doesn't dismiss the darkness. It just says, seek the light. Because you can focus on one or you can focus on the other. It might be that you walk in and you see the candles. It might be that, God love it, it takes 10 minutes to get through children's moment candles down the aisle, right? It might be one of those songs that you hear that even though it reminds you of a loved one who loved it, you can remember the good times that come along with it rather than the sadness of the loss. It can be taking time to go drive around town after about 7 p.m. Don't go before 7 because traffic is miserable. But go right before bedtime, if you're lucky, and look at all the lights. It might be going to the nursing homes this afternoon, which you're meeting here too. And seeing the faces of those that are no longer able to go out in the same way, who are brought and reminded of the deep joy found in this season when they hear some wonderfully out-of-tune kids singing, who don't know the words, God love us, and whose favorite song is Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer instead of Away in a Manger. I don't know, right? Sometimes in the darkest of times, seeking joy too is reminding one another to seek it. It might be baking cookies for your neighbors, sending cards, making phone calls, seeking joy.